I had to stop. I said, stop the car, stop the car. Oh. And it was literally because I'd never seen a landscape like this before. Yeah. And the trees and the boulders and the long distance view. Now, mind you, I'd been to national parks before, but this was completely different. And it was so enticing and compelling and dramatic, much more dramatic than I thought. A lot of people think, oh, the desert, so there's nothing out here. Nuh-uh. Yeah.
Hi, and welcome to the Desert Lady Diaries podcast, a weekly conversation with women who found their home in the Mojave Desert. I'm Dawn Davis, and this is episode 116. If you'd like more information about the podcast, it's all at the website desertladydiaries.com, and I invite you to engage with the guests, with other listeners, or me on social media, on Facebook and Instagram at Desert Lady Diaries, or on Twitter at Desert Lady Diary. Cheryl Kandel Gimson is a painter and embroidery art designer who owns Stitch Art Studio, an embroidery design and digitizing company she opened in 1991. Cheryl graduated from Cal State Northridge with a BA in illustration, and she's about to run off to New Mexico. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
What was your first experience with desert?
Well, it was probably in the mid-'80s, and coming from Los Angeles, it was Palm Springs, and I came out for spring break with a friend one year, and we stayed at her grandmother's house. It must have been Palm Desert or Indio, I can't even remember, and the grandmother drove us around and basically showed us the desert, and it was very strange, and we were kind of bored a little bit, but...
Well, it is spring break, Grandma.
Right. But then the next year for spring break, I decided, when I was actually driving my own car, I decided to come out. And that's what I did for a couple years during spring break. It was a big party scene back then in the 80s. And
okay.
Yeah.
So how did you then make the break from Palm Springs and discover Joshua Tree? Okay,
so it's funny because I never even knew Joshua Tree existed back then. It was only until...
I don't think a lot of other people did that.
No, and it wasn't very well advertised, and it may not still even be. But anyways, it was with my then boyfriend, and we started dating, and he said, hey, I used to go climbing with my older brother in Joshua Tree National Park. Let's go out there camping. And I was like, great, where is it? He says, well, it's near Palm Springs. So we drove out and we headed north on 62, and it was like this whole new world opened up for me. And we drove into the park, and I had to stop. I said, stop the car, stop the car. Oh. And it was literally because I'd never seen a landscape like this before. Yeah. And the trees and the boulders and the long distance view. Now, mind you, I'd been to national parks before, but this was completely different. And it was so enticing and compelling and dramatic. Much more dramatic than I thought. A lot of people think, oh, the desert, so there's nothing out here. Nuh-uh. Yeah. We made it a twice-a-year sojourn from LA. Nice. Spring and fall, we'd come out camping and explore.
Wow. Mm-hmm. Did you mostly just hike?
Yes, it was mostly hiking. Right. Definitely mostly hiking, a little bit of bouldering. Neither of us, I was never into rock climbing, and he had stopped at that point since then.
What was downtown Joshua Tree like when you first started climbing?
I didn't even know there was a downtown Joshua Tree.
Really?
Literally, it was so funny because we were just so focused on getting into the park. It was so funny because we didn't even know that you could even buy water somewhere along Highway 62. We actually brought water from Los Angeles with us to go into the park because we were thinking that it was so remote. It's funny how your mind thinks that way, that it's not actually reality. It was actually only until years later, like the late, maybe 98, 99, when we finally realized, oh, there's markets, there's hotels, we actually started to spend more time outside the park and get to know what was along the highway.
So when you came into the park, did you come up through Palm Springs, or did you come in through 62,
we came in through 62,
but then got off on Altamira?
No, we didn't even do that. No, we would turn right on Park Boulevard like everyone else does. Okay. And we knew there was a visitor center there. Like I said, it was just one of those things where it's like, just get into the park and just
go,
get camping and just go.
Right. Because that's our goal. We're getting into the park. We're not stopping for all this other stuff.
Exactly.
So then at some point, obviously, you made the decision to actually move to Joshua Tree. Yeah. What was it that brought you and made you decide, I need to be there all the time?
Well, a lot of things were happening in LA that may have driven a lot of other people out, I'm sure. But for us, it was just the traffic, the smog, the rude people, the fact that we're just we found it really difficult to get ahead in what we were. I had a good job. I had my embroidery. I was working for somebody back then at a place in Burbank, and that part was all good. I had that going. But my art, it was really hard for me to get into any galleries. I just didn't know what I was doing. I was a while ago, 17 years ago, 18 years ago. So I thought, you know what, let's just save up some money and just try it out for a year, go and rent a little place and try it out and see how it goes. And we got here and it was like, okay, we're going to need to make this work because I really don't want to move back to LA.
So how did you make it work?
I ended up I had a lot of contacts in the embroidery business and I just ended up carrying on with them. And it just turned out that I didn't have to be nearby to service them. A lot of my work that I do, setting up the stitch files, is done on the computer and by emails. So I could basically work from anywhere and do that. And that's exactly what happened. So it was funny. I didn't intend to open my own business, so to speak. I just morphed into working for myself.
Yeah.
And then I just decided to call it something. And so Stitch Art Studio was born.
Oh my gosh. So when you moved here, did you know anybody? I mean, from the various trips that you had taken over the course of those years, did you eventually meet people that lived here, or did you come here cold and didn't know anybody?
Came here cold, didn't know a single soul.
Wow.
But I figured with this whole new business idea I had and, wanting to be a sole entrepreneur, I decided to join the Joshua Tree Chamber of Commerce.
Okay.
And back in 04, 05, 06, 07, those years, it was very active. It had monthly mixers. Nancy Carl was the executive director back then. She'd be another great person to interview.
I know about her little trail, and she's on my list.
Okay, good. And for some reason, whoever was on the board of directors back then had a really great camaraderie with each other. They put on the Turtle Days events and the Coyote Fest events. I don't know if anyone remembers those, but
we could talk about those, but keep going.
Yeah, and that's actually where I met Jimbo. We were friends at first, and so we served on the board together with a group of people. And like I said, we had great camaraderie, and the mixers were fantastic. And I was you're scared. You go, you don't know anybody, you just start talking to people at the mixers. Right. People were very kind. And I ended up drumming up, making friends and drumming up business. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think when I first moved, my rule was if I saw somebody out at an event like 3 times, I would approach them and say, I've seen you like 3 times. I'm new, blah, blah, blah. And that's how the conversation, gets going. Right. Let's go back to Turtle Days and Coyote Days. What was that all about? Because we don't do that now. That was a chamber function?
Yeah, I believe it was a chamber function from the 50s, the Turtle Days. So, of course, serving on the board, you had to be active in putting the event on. So everyone would kind of pick, I'll do this, I'll do this, I'll do this. Mm-hmm. And we did, and it happened. And it was a lot of work, but it was also very rewarding and lots of fun as well. And same thing with Coyote Fest. I guess that was sort of born during the time that I served on the board, and it ran for 5 years. So Turtle Days was the spring event, and Coyote Fest was the fall event.
Okay.
And it was the same thing. You would just pick what you would like to do, and if you need to run an errand and pick something up and coordinate with somebody or make some calls for porta potties or whatever it was that had to be done for the event. Again, hard work, but very rewarding. Oh, the other thing that they asked me to do, bringing my talents to the table, was that I designed the posters.
Oh, nice.
For the events that were printed and passed around the community and things like that.
Where were the actual events? Where did they take place in town?
From my memory, the Turtle Days was at the community center, Joshua Tree Community Center.
Oh, okay.
I don't know if it was there every year. And then the Coyote Fest, I remember, was a few times was at the empty lot behind Coyote Corner on Park Boulevard. They had built a stage there that stayed there for quite some time afterwards as well. And I'm sorry, I just don't remember exactly where it was. That's every single year that I served.
That's okay. Sometimes it's just interesting to people to go, oh, really? They had that there? Or, exactly.
But I want to interject and tell you that that wasn't the only place that I volunteered at. During those years, that's when I heard about the Arts Council, which I got to tell you was a pleasant surprise for me because I didn't know there was any kind of arts-related organization here. And I also did not know that there were artists and musicians that lived up here.
Wow.
I moved here to be next to the park because it was my favorite national park in the world. And this was a pleasant surprise to find this out. So when I found out that the Arts Council was here, I got involved with that. And I served as secretary for a couple years, and then I was president in 2012. And I was on the art tours as an artist for 4 years. In 2006, I would do it every other year. So 06, 08, 10, and 12 were the years that I was on the art tours as an artist.
Yeah.
Yeah. And again, another really great group of people back then. We had good fun. It was, of course, for a cause that was close to my heart and stuff like that. So.
Well, and you found a place then that wasn't LA, where you kind of were having some difficulty getting some traction on that part of your life, and then you come here and it just kind of opens up.
It's exactly what happened.
Yeah.
I felt like I moved from being a small fish in a big pond to a medium to big fish in a little pond.
That makes total sense.
Right.
So were there any other events or activities that you started to enjoy as a result of being here in the desert?
Yes, there was one. The Music Fest was actually a really big event that, gosh, I don't even know if anyone remembers this either, but there was a Didgeridoo Fest that was back in 03 or 04, and it was at the lake and campgrounds, same place. And that was actually my first time I went to like some big outdoor music thing here in the desert, and I loved it. We brought our folding chairs, sat them down, listened to didgeridoo music for 3 hours. Wow. It was amazing, but it didn't last for some reason. I don't know why they didn't carry that on. But step in Barnett and his amazing team of people, and he established something really organic and community oriented here. And I didn't go every single year, but eventually I did. When Jimbo and I got together and we started dating, that was basically our thing. We went there. So that was sort of, I guess you could call it a tradition out here.
Yeah,
that
exactly.
Was it.
Yeah. Did you grow up in California?
I did. I was born and raised in Los Angeles.
Oh, okay.
The San Fernando Valley.
Wow. So you did leave your hometown to come here.
I left my hometown to come here, and I do still think that California is a beautiful countryside. The mountains, the ocean, it's got everything, which I totally get why people live here.
Yeah.
But I don't miss LA. I don't miss the people. I don't miss all that other stuff.
Yeah, I had a friend the other day send me a Facebook message, and it was like this stick figure man, and then his arm fell off, his other arm fell off, his leg fell off, his leg fell off, his head dropped to the ground, and I was like, oh no, what's wrong? He's like, this town, these people, this traffic. I'm like, you know where I am. So I mean, it's a pretty hard place, and I used to live downtown, and I still am in some of those groups, the community groups, and it's really hard. It breaks my heart, really.
It does too. Me too.
Yeah, it's just really hard to live there, and there's a lot of problems that are happening as a result of that right now. So it's really difficult. What got you into being an artist? How did you go that route?
I think people tell me I was creative my whole life. So it's funny because I just unearthed a bunch of portfolios from college and some other memorabilia. And we can talk about that in a little bit.
Oh, I saw something. You put up it was a Tina Turner, I think, sketch.
My impending move to another desert. So I'm starting to go through stuff. And I came across a painting I'd done in kindergarten that won a second place Halloween Safety Contest award.
That's awesome.
And I'm looking at it going, this has nothing to do with Halloween or safety. I painted a girl and a rainbow. And I was always doing something crafty, whether it was a paint by numbers kit or a marionette kit or,
pot holders, the weaving.
Exactly. I did all those kind of things, weaving with the pot holders, all that stuff in the 70s, when you're growing up. Yeah.
I do. Yeah. I still have some of those pot holders.
That's funny.
And then how did you get into then digitizing your work to make hats and
embroidery
sweatshirts and
so
t-shirts?
After college, I graduated with a BA in illustration. So I really thought that I was going to be like a commercial artist, something that had to do with that. Illustrating for magazines, or computers were just coming out then, and one of my last classes was desktop publishing and stuff. And as soon as I started using a computer back in those classes, I realized that computers were the way to go. That if I did something with computers, I'd at least have a chance at some kind of job, a steady job. It wasn't until my mom helped me network. She was working at a furniture place in Los Angeles and with a lot of people. And she just put the word out, my daughters, blah, blah, blah. And somebody chimed in and said, hey, I have a friend who is in the embroidery and screen print business. She's pregnant. She's going to be on leave. She needs someone to kind of take over and assist.
Wow.
I had no idea anything about the embroidery business. It was nothing I ever knew anything about. And I went for the interview, and all I showed her were my portfolio of my illustrations, probably including that one Tina Turner picture I posted on Facebook. And she literally said to me, well, yeah, you're really talented, but I really don't know if this is kind of the thing that you're looking for to do. And I had to just kind of back up and say, no, actually, I really do want to do this. I know that computers are the wave of the future, so to speak. And if you give me a chance, I won't let you down. And she did. She gave me a chance, and it turned out that it was a great fit for me because it utilized all my skills, and including math skills, that you don't think you'd ever going to need, after your math classes. But it just turned out to be a great fit, and I just stuck with it. And I got really good over the years. There was a learning curve, but I've been doing it now for 28 years.
That's amazing. And then in addition to that, you also still keep up with your own painting practice.
Yes, that comes and goes. Right now I'm sort of on a down, just because there's other things going on. But yes, and I have, like I said, I've been on the art tours in the past, and I mostly paint landscapes, acrylic on canvas, and I love doing pet portraits or animal paintings.
I saw some of those at one of the recent more
yes,
recent
there
shows.
was the Dog Day show back in the summer at Gallery 62. Yeah, so when that call came out, I was like, oh, I've got a bunch of paintings. I've got stuff I can show. So I've just found really, really, luck selling at venues that are always open, that have a lot of people coming through. Yeah. Like the 29 Palms Inn restaurant is a really great place to show. Pie for the People. I sold things at Pie for the People as well. And I don't show all the time. I think it's just when I feel like I've worked enough on a body of work and had a theme to it. Like I've done my red Joshua Tree theme. I did starting back in 2011 or 2012 or something back then. And then I moved on to agaves, and then I moved on to little miniature paintings. And now I'm sort of like, okay, well, I'm not sure what's going to inspire me next, but maybe the New Mexico desert will inspire me next.
Right.
So
what a great segue. So tell me, just because I've only seen on Facebook what you guys are doing, so you've bought a house out there that apparently needed some work, and it seems that you're doing most of the work yourselves. Is that how it's going?
We went on a road trip last summer, Four Corners road trip, and it was amazing. I checked off some bucket list items. One of them was not New Mexico, but we had friends that had already moved to Sante Fe from Joshua Tree. And so we thought we'd come out and go to Sante Fe and see what that scene was all about. I can talk about the art scene there, which is amazing,
That's
on
what
Canyon
people
Boulevard.
keep telling me. They're like, you would love Sante Fe.
Right.
So.
And that opened my eyes. It's like, oh my gosh. And then we didn't really talk about anything New Mexico related until beginning of January of this year. And my husband said, hey, let's have a look. Let's kind of scout out areas there and see what it's all about. And that's exactly what we did. We spent a couple trips out there, and literally, I think it was our second scouting trip that we found that little fixer house, and we realized it was in a pretty decent neighborhood, and we made an offer on it, and we got it. And
oh my gosh. Wow.
Thus begins our giant, I call it our giant art project, because that's basically what it is, when you're not gutting, but when you're tearing out old carpet and tile and
doing some remodel.
And all that remodel stuff, and even skimming walls and redoing drywall and all this electrical work. That's all Jimbo stuff. That's what he knows how to do.
Thank goodness.
I'm good at the painting, of course,
right?
But and the cleanup and the yes, honey, what do you need? That kind of thing.
Okay. I'll get you a nice tea. So it was just kind of on a whim then that you said, let's just go take a look.
We knew that we've kind of been thinking about moving to other areas. Actually, one of the areas that we would love to move to, but would have taken a village literally, was Wales in the United Kingdom.
Oh,
we
really?
would love to have lived there, moved there and lived there.
Is that where Jimbo's from?
Yes, he's actually born in Wales, and he grew up in London. But it just turned out that one of those things where you just would have had to give up everything. You just cannot move your household items. You really had to just literally give up everything. And then plus my 2 cats. What am I going to do about them?
Oh, right. Yeah, there's probably some kind of quarantine thing.
There's not a quarantine thing, but there's definitely a rabies shot thing that you have to give them. And then how expensive is that going to be to get on the same flight with them? And there's no way they're going down in the cargo hold. Right. They're coming with me on my lap. And it's like, God, what an ordeal. Just such an ordeal. And there were other obstacles as well. And I don't know. I mean, that might happen in the future at some point, but I think for now, New Mexico seems to be a really good next step, next chapter.
Right. Were there any things about here that added to making that decision? Anything going on here in Joshua Tree, per se, that you were like, well, played out, maybe we should just move on?
There were some things that were played out. I say that, but there were also lots of things that I personally still love about here. I still love the park, even though it's overcrowded. I still love going to the restaurants that are still here, even though it's, like I said, overcrowded.
Right.
Yes, I'm burning out on the overcrowdedness. It's sort of a love-hate thing because for a few years, we had an Airbnb and we hosted people from the LA, San Diego, Orange County area and abroad as well and stuff like that. We did that for 3 years. We welcomed them with open arms. We loved being the host, and showing them around. This is our favorite park. Here are all the great things to do. We were very, very active in that. We met our guests. We're still doing that same thing. We still have a small campground with 2 cabins on it, and we host campers now, which is actually a lot easier. You don't have to wash dishes and clean sheets and vacuum the floors and things like that. We still love welcoming people to the area and giving them pointers and tips and things like that. But I think for Jimbo, he's been wanting to leave for a long time. I think this is a good move for him. And for me, hey, it's a great adventure.
Well, and with your work, you can, like you said earlier, you can probably pretty much be anywhere
I'm confident
get
enough,
the job done.
I'm confident enough now, having been doing this for so long, and that I know I can move my art studio pretty much anywhere and join another chamber of commerce and get the ball rolling again and meet new people. I do hope, though, that I would be able to keep my customers here. I do have longtime customers, Joshua Tree Outfitters and the National Park has contracted me. So, and among other people, too, there's a screen print place in Yucca Valley that I work very closely with, that shirt place.
Oh,
and
Sissy?
Sissy, at that shirt place. Yeah. Oh, she'd be another great interview. There's so many. And, like I said, I just hope that they would carry on using me for their embroidery needs and everything.
Well, I think you've proven yourself. I think I saw that you've been at least doing outfitters for more than 15 years.
They were one of my first contacts here that I approached them, and it's just been a great working relationship and friendship with them.
That's great.
Yeah.
Do you spend much time thinking about your relationship to the desert?
I do. Not a lot of time, but there are times that will strike me. We would frequent the Artist Tea program, Sunday mornings at 9 o'clock. Our friend Jenny Kane hosted that the first year it came into being. And it was during those times that we'd drive or ride the motorcycle. I gotta say, it was pretty fun. And then maybe, after doing the Artist Tea, then we'd go on a hike, and it'd be like, yeah, okay. It just brought back all that flood of memories. I remember why I first moved out here, to get away from everything, and it always reminds me how much I love the park. I don't go hiking very often anymore, just because it just seems like weekends are all I have, and like I said, try to avoid the crowds when the weather's good and that kind of stuff. And where I live, our house has forever views. I can see both the tops of San Gorgonio and San Jacinto. I'm out in North Joshua Tree near Border in Aberdeen. If you know where Noah Purifoy's Outdoor Art Museum is, we're just 1 block north.
Oh, wonderful.
So we have this, all those views out there, and the quiet. It is so still and quiet out there. Actually, I'm really probably going to miss that the most.
Oh, so is where you're moving a little less rural?
It's definitely less rural. Okay. It's in a neighborhood. Now, mind you, having said that, it's actually a very quiet neighborhood, all things considered. Not a lot of dogs that bark.
Great.
We're a few blocks from a main road that goes north-south through it. It's in Rio Rancho. If anyone knows where that is, it's like attached to Albuquerque on the northwest corner. Yeah. It actually is a quiet neighborhood, being a neighborhood. But I will admit, I don't have forever views there. Yeah. Our house does not look at the Sandia Mountain, which was one of my, things I was hoping for, But hey, all it takes is either a walk or a drive around the corner and there it is, right?
Yeah, exactly. And how is that landscape different from here?
It's definitely, it's at 5,000 elevation, so there's definitely higher in elevation. So you've got a lot more green trees. There's deciduous trees. We're 5 minutes down this road from the Rio Grande River, which I can't wait to explore. There's still cactus, and there's still a lot of the same critters. There's coyotes and rabbits and roadrunners. Roadrunner is the state bird.
The state bird.
State bird, and snakes, even though I've never seen a snake, but I did read about that. There's definitely lots of snakes in New Mexico. And the soil in certain areas is a lot redder. You definitely get that. And there's no creosotes, but they have their own native bushes and things like that.
Right.
So rivers there are kind of a big thing, rivers and lakes.
So all that said, you're moving from one desert to another. So obviously you're familiar with the desert and you have a love for it. What would you tell someone who said, you know what, Cheryl, I'm thinking about moving to the desert?
I would say, go for it. Life is short. Try it out. Have a little money saved up. If you're not lucrative enough to buy a place, no worries. Rent a place. That's what I did at first. Dip your feet in. Summers are hot, but you never know. They could be more rainier than winters, and they've been known to be. Monsoon season, everyone complains about the humidity, but it's just all part of life in the desert. Be more open-minded and explore. And as far as being financially secure, like I said, save up. That's what we did. Save up some money. Have a backup plan in case things don't work out. But hey, you know what? Go for it. You'll be pleasantly surprised. And people out here are different. There's no traffic. There could be smog, but there's not visible smog all the time. You know what I'm saying? Like the big city has and stuff like that. So yeah.
Well, I'm so glad that you were able to make it today and talk with me.
Likewise.
Thank you so much for coming. Before you go, for my Patreon subscribers, I would like you to choose 4 numbers between 1 and 50, and your answers will be content that is exclusively available to Patreon supporters. So, your numbers, please.
8, 25, 48, and 50.
The first question will be, was there ever a time you thought you wouldn't need to support yourself if you were married? Since coming to the desert, what have you been surprised to discover about yourself? Is female progression in the workplace better or worse? And last, what was the first paying job you ever had, and where was it? If you would like to hear Cheryl's answers to those questions, go out to desertladydiaries.com, click on the support page, and sign up to be a patron of the podcast. Thanks again for being here today.
Thank you so much, and you're welcome. No one ever says you're welcome anymore.
Thank you.
You're welcome, and thank you.
Very polite. Your mother would be proud.
In keeping with Thanksgiving week, I have a cornucopia of shout-outs this week. Cheryl K. and Stitch Art Studios, thank you for your generous donation to the podcast. I appreciate you so much. Also to Heidi Anderson Pearson, I am so grateful for your rave of the podcast on the Morongo Basin Business Rant and Rave page. This has been a banner week for newsletter signups, and I believe that it is thanks to your post. So really, thank you so much for doing that, and thank you so much for being a supporter of the podcast. To Kathleen L., Patty C., Josie K., Susan M., and Meg S., welcome. I'm so grateful for you signing up to receive the weekly newsletter. Every week, you'll receive an email with the latest Desert Lady Diaries episode. I hope you've had an opportunity to listen to a few episodes, and thanks again for signing up. If you haven't yet signed up for the newsletter, just go to desertladydiaries.com and click on the button that says weekly newsletter. It's super easy. Jen H., it was great to meet you last Friday at the photo sharing event. Welcome to the desert. I also have some exciting news to share. I'm opening up a little store in Joshua Tree. It's called Soul Connection, and I hope to see some of you out there when I open the store on Friday, November 29th, the day after Thanksgiving. The store has art, books, and music from high desert locals, some of whom have been on this podcast. And there will also be some other items like greeting cards and gift bags. I hope you'll come and visit. The store is located in the Shops at Zanny's, which is located behind Zandelion's Boutique at the corner of Highway 62 and El Reposo in downtown Joshua Tree, an area becoming known as the East End of downtown Joshua Tree. There you'll also find fellow merchants, R&D Home Goods, Desert Rebel, Crystal's Handmade Addiction, and of course our mothership, Zandelion's Boutique. I would love it if you would start following the store's Instagram at Soul Connection JT, on which I'll be putting up more photos soon after I've set up the store, and I'm also working on a proper logo for the place. Store hours to start will be Fridays from 1 to 5 and Saturdays and Sundays from 11 to 5. And on second Saturdays, we will be open until 9 p.m. I had a little store when I lived in Cleveland, Ohio, and I have missed being a shopkeeper. So come by, introduce yourself, and check it out. I look forward to welcoming you there. And now here's Catherine Sfela to tell you about her podcast, Myth Matters.
Are you looking for a new way to think and transform? Tune into Myth Matters, a bi-weekly podcast of storytelling and conversation about mythology and why it's important to life today. Find a more creative way to live. Learn more at mythicmojo.com and keep the mystery in your life alive.
Have a wonderful Thanksgiving. See you next week. Thank you so much for listening.